And welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the show, proud member of the Education Podcast Network, VoiceEd Radio Canada, wherever you are taking in your podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your support. And we are rolling. To our live audience, jump in the show, say hello, jump in the chat, let us know where you're coming from, and certainly say hello. Ask a question to our guest tonight, Charles Williams, coming to us from Chicago area, Illinois. Charles is an author. Charles is a school leader. Charles, he's got his own consulting business as well as a podcast. So I thought I did a lot, but Charles is getting it done. He's grinding and trying to make a difference in education. So we will meet Charles in just a moment. A quick word from tonight's sponsor, IXL. It's May 13th, right? We've had our kids all year in school. Did they learn? Did they not learn? What's the assessments? IXL is a great way to track that growth, track that assessments. It advances the kids. If they're struggling, it meets them where they're at. So there's a lot of benefits there. A quick word from IXL. I'd like to thank IXL for sponsoring today's podcast. Over 1 million teachers use IXL in their classroom every day. IXL is the most widely used online learning and teaching platform K through 12. It empowers schools with complete curriculum, thousands of instructional resources, robust reporting, assessment data, and more. It saves teachers a lot of valuable time with ready-made plans aligned to the standards and the textbooks. Built-in engagement tools like custom competitions make learning fun for students. And IXL's diagnostic is research proven to be a strong predictor of performance on standardized assessments. And the best part, everything I just mentioned is all integrated into one platform, so you can simplify your EdTech tools. Visit IXL.com to lead your students towards data-driven excellence today. The link is in the show notes. And again, appreciate IXL sponsoring today's podcast. All right. Thank you for that. Let's get started. We're going to meet Charles in just a moment. But as I shared, it's May 13th. If you're up in Illinois, New York, right, we got about a month and a half left of school. But some of the other schools are getting ready to end their years down south, places like that. But how are you supporting your staff here at the end of the year? I got my Port Jervis shirt on. I say yes to Port Jervis. And but I know people are tired. I know people are stressed. I know they have a lot on their plate here at the end of the year. There's award ceremonies and recommendations for next year. There's a lot on their plate. So what are things that we could do as school leaders to maybe pull some things back, protect their time a little bit, not dump another professional development or dump another initiative on them now? Let's protect our teachers' time. Let's support our staff. They need support coming down the stretch here. If you happen to be a school that doesn't have air conditioning, right, it could be hot, and it's just people are tired. So you need to recognize that as a school leader and support your people. I say yes to Port Jervis and want to support them in every way we can. So just something to think about as we get rolling here. But enough of me talking. Let's meet Charles coming to us from Chicago area. Charles, welcome.
Hey, Andrew, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for coming on, Charles. I know it's been a long time, us trying to make this happen, but here we are.
Here we are. Let's do this thing. I'm excited.
Cool. Let's do it. How about you? You were in school today. Tell me, what was one good thing in school today, Charles? And one thing that said, man, we got to do a better job with that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's the end of the school year. Lots and lots of things are happening. And I think one of the best things that for me, which was today, which is almost every day, it's just being out and about with the kids, right? Every time that bell rings, not only am I in the hallway to monitor the things that are happening, but I do these loops, I do these walk around to the school, just checking in. And it's not just with my students, but it's with my staff. And it's letting them know, like, hey, I'm here, I'm present. If you need something, more than often, I'm going to be passing by in a little bit. And so it's probably one of the best things about just, especially this time of the year, because there are so many different things happening. I think something we need to do better. We're also in a budget season, and man, I think we get so focused on all of the year, end of year stuff, all the to-dos, all the checklists, the crises. And so like right now in Chicago, we're facing, right, like I'm sure so many other districts, a potentially massive budget deficit. And so, we're having these conversations and we're so tuned in that it's easy to lose track of everything else, right? We've got summer planning, we've got next year planning, we've got things to think about. So just because we may have a budget crisis doesn't mean the world around us stops. And so we got to make sure that we are still tuned into our staff, to our students, because regardless, right, even though we might be trying to crunch numbers and make ends meet, they're still going to be in our schools. So we got to make sure that we're paying attention to them.
Yeah, good point there, Charles. Friends, this is Charles Williams, again, Chicago area. Charles, give us a brief background. You've been in education a long time. You're an author, you're a podcaster, you've had a variety of different positions. But give us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so the one thing I tell people all the time is that I didn't want to be an educator, right? Like I didn't grow up like, man, I can't wait to be a teacher. Like I fell into it out of a space of practicality. Growing up, I did very, very well in school. And so my grandmother, she was always like, you're going to be an educator. I was like, absolutely not. But I graduated from college, and at the time, and I tell people this all the time, so I know I was married, had 2 kids, and divorced all before I was 21.
Whoa!
Right? Yeah, when you say live a life, I mean, it was a whirlwind. So when I graduated from college, I was in a place of being a single dad with 2 girls, trying to figure out what am I going to do. And so I had 2 job offers. One was in the school district, one was doing something else. And the school district one was steady. So I literally landed in education out of a space of practicality, and then just absolutely fell in love with it. And then went back to school, got my master's, and I transitioned to teaching, got my master's in teaching, stuck around, got my master's in educational administration, and just really, really skyrocketed through. I was a teacher for about 7 years, was an AP for 1 year, then I was a principal the next year, was not the plan.
Wow.
I was like, this is not how this was supposed to go, but it did. And then I sat in the principal seat for about 8-9 years before dropping back into the AP role. And during that time, as you mentioned earlier, I started venturing out into all these other projects by the consulting business. I was speaking all over the country, writing books, writing articles, having the podcast. And it was really, really hard to run a school and do all of those things. So I was able to transition back into an AP role and spend time in both of those. So yeah, like literally was at school all day. This morning, came home, right, ate a little something, jumped on here with you. So, while some people are like, man, that's crazy to do all of that, it is really my bucket filler. So I'm fortunate that I get to end my night with you.
Charles, what was it when you say you loved it, right? You loved the kids. What was it when you got there? You were like that clicked. People, they talk about education, they say less people are going in. But we fell in love with the job. We fell in love with it. What was it for you?
I don't know if it was just one thing, right? As you were asking that question, I started thinking about it, right? I love the aha moments, right? Watching those light bulbs, like seeing the look on a kid's face when they're like, oh, that's what it means, right? I was just doing rounds yesterday. Kid comes up to me and he was like, AP, I know you are an English teacher, but I need help with this math. It says, y is the function of x. I don't know what it means. And I was like, oh, look, it's where it intersects at the, and he was like, wait, what? And he plugged it and he was like, that's so simple, right? It was that aha moment. And even yesterday, after like 20 years in education, it was that moment, like this is why we do what we do, right? And so for me, that's one of the biggest things. And I think one of the other pieces is you get a sense that you're accomplishing something. Andrew, I had so many jobs. I mean, I sold vacuums at one point. Like, your job is over, the day is over, and you're like, what did I accomplish today? Right? What did I give back to the world today? And in the field of education, like we get to do that every single day. Don't get me wrong. I know there are days that you're like, why am I doing this? I'm scoping out LinkedIn, right? But find those moments each and every day to get where you get to say, I got to do this today. Right? This was something that I had the opportunity, I had the privilege, I had the honor of doing. And it's those moments. And so hang on to them because you're going to need them when the going gets tough.
Nice. And not only hang on to them, right? I like to write them down. I like to capture them. I want to remember those things because those aha moments can help people, which clearly you've done as an author, as a podcaster, and also a consulting business. Charles, how? I mean, we're tired. You come home at the end of the day, but you're saying I'm going to do more. So talk to me about starting CW Consulting and how that's been for you.
You know, it was interesting. My very, 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 very first session that I ever presented was about 7 years ago, 8 years at this point, and it went horribly wrong. The title of the session was "Failure is an Option," and I leaned way too hard into it because I mean, people were like getting up and walking out, like it was horrible, and I was like, you know what, maybe the speaking thing is not for me. So I hung up my hat for like 2 years.
Whoa!
And
After one session?
After what I was like, it was my very, very first one, and I was like, yeah, no, I don't know how people do this. Like, I'm done. I gave it a shot. So 2 years later, I was like, let me try again. Right? Let me try again. So they gave me the last slot on the last day. I was like in the basement of this conference space.
And knocking on the door to get in.
I'm like, all right, paying my dues. But it was standing room only. And at the end, a woman came up and said, hey, we would really love for you to come out to our district. Do you do this full time? And I looked at her dead in the eyes and I was like, absolutely, I do this all the time. I've never presented at this place. But she was like, love it. I'm going to reach out. And I was like, now I need to actually have a company. So I scrambled and I created this idea of the company. And then it just ballooned from there, being able to host workshops, being able to speak. And it's really just, I would love to say finding balance, but I don't think balance is the right word because it's never perfect, right? I think when you think of balance, you're like, all right, cool, it's steady. It's always kind of finding, all right, I have some time here, I have some time there. My wife and I, we've come to this agreement, like Tuesdays and Thursdays are my hustle days. So here we are on a Tuesday, like doing this thing, right? She's like, I'm going to go visit the grandson. You go ahead and work. So I come home and I crunch things out. So it's really finding spaces of where it works and just really making the most of it. But I think that it also helps because every moment that I pour into this, I need to make it intentional. You know, it's not just messing around. It's not like, I'm really trying to be intentional with the time that I had because I'll be honest, for years, I sacrificed family, right, to get to where I was. And at one point I looked up and I was like, man, my girls are grown. Mm. That's time I'm never, ever, ever going to get back. And I really had to make a hard choice to say, I can't do that anymore. I can't get that time back, but I can adjust how I move forward. And so now it's, you know, nope, this time is for this time is for this, and really leaning into it. And so it's helped to be very intentional about how I'm using that time.
That's a great point there. We were talking off air. My kids are 18, 16, and 13. My son's here tonight, but the other two are out and about. And I'm a techie guy too, Charles. I got the phone, I got all that, but I also got my little black book with my dates. And I like to look, at the full month, right? And if I see a bunch of X's, on a certain week, I know I gotta, all right, well, if I got a bunch of X's, I'm going to slow it down. So this is something that helps me for sure. So, friends, if you're watching live, please jump in and say hello to Charles. Maybe ask a question with that. But Charles, that being said about the consulting, you can't just walk up there and wing it. Where do you create the content? How do you physically create a session to say, hey, this is going to help somebody, and here's how I'm going to do it?
Most of the ideas come from conversations that I have with my colleagues and my peers, right? Where we're sitting down, we're having a conversation, and it's like, oh wait, I have a billion workshops in the works because you say something, you're like, oh, that could be something, right? There's a need here. But what I really do is I start just flushing them out, and if it makes sense, but I approach it very much like I used to with lessons. Right? Where do I want to go with this? How do I make this creative? How do I make it engaging? Right? I don't want anybody just sitting there and just listening to me talk at them. Right? When people are in my sessions, like, this thing is going to be lively. It's going to be engaging. You're going to be doing, right? You're going to have conversations with me, with your peers. You're going to be learning. You're going to be applying it to the world. So because my whole point is when you walk out of there, I don't want you just to have an idea. I want you to have something on paper. I want you to have a plan that you could take back and implement right away. And so I've toyed with a lot of ideas over the years, but it really stems from just having conversations like this, where somebody's like, you know what, we really should have something around this, and it's like, oh, let me create something, and I'll pitch it to a conference, and we'll, just see how it hits. Right? There's sometimes I do a session and it's like nobody shows up, and you're like, all right, maybe that was just not really a need. And then there are other ones where it is jam-packed, standing room only, and you're like, okay, we really need to dive into this. Like one of the workshops I do throughout the year, it's about resilience, right? But it's really refocusing on this idea of just like, well, we're just going to bounce back. Like we can't just keep doing the things that we've always done, nor should we be reactive, but really taking a proactive approach. And that has really resonated with people to say, how can I equip myself? How can I equip my staff? How can I equip my students with the tools, the skills, the knowledge in order so that way when things go wrong, because they are going to go wrong, that we are better equipped to navigate that space, instead of when it goes wrong to just be like, oh man, now what do I do? I'm going to bring out coloring sheets. Or I'm going to like so being real proactive, right? And I mean, to be honest, that really stemmed from even a space of our own that we navigated. And I was like, if I need this, right, somebody else does. So sometimes the workshops I've created were really my own exploration and learning. And so I've learned this thing. Now I want to share it with you.
That's a great point there, right? Something that you've experienced, but you don't make it about you. You make it about the learning. You make it about the growth.
Right. That whole journey, right? And that's part of what I talk about. That's actually the motto of the company is of learn, grow, lead, right? Because I've learned, I've grown in this space, and now I'm leading it, but now I need you to do that exact same thing. And so I'm not telling you, hey, this is what I do. In fact, I tell people all the time, my job is not to give you the answer or the solution, because there is no one answer or solution. My job is to facilitate your learning and growth. And so that way you could develop something that makes sense to you in your space, right? And so I know sometimes, right, it's like working ourselves out of a job, but like, I'm just here to facilitate. Like you have the skills, you have the knowledge, you have the talent. My job is to help you discover that and put it to good use. So you're like, cool, now I'm good to go off on my own.
Yeah, great points there, friends. This is Charles Williams. Charles and I connected at the Illinois Principals Association Conference, Peoria, Illinois. He attended my session, and right away I recognized him. I was like, I read his stuff. I follow him, and it was like, bam. It's funny, right? Like you feel like you meet a friend for the first time. I mean, literally, there was a bunch of people there, and I'm like, bing, yo, man, I know you. And
I'll be honest, when you did that, I was like, me? Like, I was like, this is awesome, because I came here to be, I know this guy. So yeah, I appreciate it, and it was a phenomenal session, by the way. So thank you for it.
Thank you, and I know you presented as well, and they're a fantastic organization. Charles, back to the work. In addition to presenting, you've written a couple of books. People talk about writing books, and they say, I got the idea. You actually have done it a couple of times. One as a co-author. Talk to me about your writing process. It's one thing to present, but it's also one thing to sit down with the discipline to make it happen. What's your process like?
So, I've really gotten into the habit of like notes. So I'll use I forget the name of the app, but my best ideas come when I'm not writing, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm driving, I'm literally like in the shower or something, and I'm like, oh, this is like I'm in there, right? You're like rub-a-dub-dubbing, and I was like, oh wait, and I just outlined an entire chapter, and I was like, I can't, right? So I started recording my thoughts out loud, and then I take that and I transfer it over.
Okay.
But I think part of it, right? And I've heard this, the discipline is just sit down and write. Just it doesn't have to be perfect. And I'll be honest, Andrew, that's one of my hardest things, because I think things through, right? I'm very linear in that. And I'm thinking from beginning to end. I'm thinking about formatting. So when I'm to sit down and just to dump, right, is a challenge for me, which is ironic because I was an English teacher and I talked about the sloppy copies, but like it's always a challenge. So that is probably one of my biggest barriers of not just generating ideas, but of it doesn't have to be perfect. Like get it out and then play with it, reformat, do all the things, but just finding some time, right? Like, and I think for me, capitalizing on those opportunities when that moment strikes, when that aha hits, right? You don't have to necessarily be at a computer, jot it down somewhere, record it somewhere, capture it. So that way, when you are in front of a computer and you're sitting there with like, man, I don't know what's right. You have material that you've worked on. And more often than not, as you start playing with it, the creative juices start flowing.
Yeah. Charles, is the recipe create a leadership session and then write the book, or write a book, which then will lead to, doing leadership sessions?
I would love to say it was write the book, which then leads to sessions. It hasn't gone that way. I've done way more sessions than books, but I think they bounce off of one another, right? There are sometimes literally some of the sessions are ideas from a book, right? And it's almost like teasing it out and toying, like let's see how this lands. Let's see if this resonates with people. And right, if it's one of those sessions where I have two people in the like, maybe that won't be a chapter in the book. Like it's playing around with it. But I will be honest, I'm working on this one book with the Dave Burgess, right, the Pirate People, and we're the whole purpose, the approach for that book is how can we turn this thing into workshops? How can we flush this out into other pieces? Right, the book back here, I was trying to remember the side. It's been a while. That book right there, right, was just written. It was just memoirs and just ideas, right? So it wasn't written with the idea of sessions, but things have come out of it. So, I won't say one leads into the other necessarily all the time. It's this back and forth flow of ideas. And it's like, it generated in this way. So let's put it out there and let's see how it lands.
Yeah, Dave is a fantastic author and presenter himself. He talks about, is it evergreen, right? Will it last? And can it last really, or is it like a one-hit wonder? Some people write books and then it's outdated in 2 years because whatever that thing was changed. So, well, good luck with Dave, and that's he's incredible.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
He has a few books under his umbrella, just a few.
Yeah, just a couple of things happening.
Yeah, Dave's fantastic. Charles, you heard my opening comment about support. You mentioned resilience earlier. So again, it's May 13th, right? Chicago schools, you got about 5 weeks left of school. How specifically are some things that you are doing to support educators, support people that are tired, that are kind of, tripping towards the finish line?
So I was just talking to my wife about this, and it'll probably be a blog post, right? I'm in the process of drafting it. But there's that phrase, like, do what's best for kids. And I heard about it, like you hear it. And the other day I was just like, but what about staff? Right? Like, why isn't that phrase flushed out where it's do what's best for kids and staff? Right. And so that's one of those things that I'm trying to make sure that I am taking care of my people, my staff, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are taking care of the kids. And so if I'm not taking care of them, no one's going to be able to take care of the kids. And so, just being very transparent and open with them. We had meetings coming up and it was just like, no, like we don't like one of the things you mentioned was about how do I give time back? And I'm very, very, very cognizant about how do I take things off your plate? How do I make sure that you have the time, the space, the things that you need? We were going to try to do this assessment, and our tech was all messed up. And I had two options, right? We could have either tried to push through, which would have meant that I would have had to steal a bunch of tech from a bunch of teachers at the end of the year, right? Like the day of, like, yeah, teachers would have loved that. Or we could say, you know what? Let's pause this thing because it's not the most critical aspect. We have other data points. And the teachers were like, wait, we could do that? I was like, yeah, like it's okay. And they were just like, thank you. Right? Like, you're not taking my tech from me. You're not making me shift things at the last possible minute. We're not taking another assessment just to take another assessment. But like, what are we going to do with the data points? Right? And so I made that decision, and I think it resonated a lot with my staff. It helps. My wife's a teacher. So one of my things is like, I tell her all the time.
Check in.
Right.
How's this going to land? Yeah.
Like, exactly. That's, Sunday I'm like, babe, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And she was like, don't do that to your staff. Right. Do this. And I'm like, no, absolutely. And so it helps because I want to make sure that I never lose sight of what it means to be a teacher. I've been out of the classroom longer than I was inside of it at this point. And so for me, that is a critical piece. Something that I said my very, very first year in leadership was I can never forget what that's like. And so one, it helps that my wife is in that space, but also just to make sure that I'm tuning in and connecting with the staff. And so, yeah, I think at this time of year as a school leader, like literally go through what doesn't need to be there, what doesn't have to be on their plates, what take those things off, and just having space for check-ins, because the same way that you're frustrated and you're frazzled and you're tired, so are your teachers. And so just finding what right. And for me, like at the beginning of the year, I asked them, for example, I was like, what's your favorite little treat? And so I had this like little Google form and they filled it out. And anybody who filled it out, I was sneaking into rooms last week, dropping off little treats. And so somebody was like, was this you? I was like, what are you talking about? But it's like that little like, thank you. And it's like, you listened. That form that you had us fill out, it wasn't just another thing that we were doing. Like you actually listened, you paid attention, you know what. And so I think it goes a long, long way. And so it doesn't have to be this big, extravagant thing, but just let your teachers know that you're there for them.
Great stuff there, Charles. And certainly teachers, educators, hang in there down the stretch. This is Charles Williams. Amy, thanks for jumping in the chat there. Charles's website is in the link there. A lot of information, a lot of resources on his presenting, his writing. The website is really sharp, Charles.
Thank you. I just revamped it, so I appreciate it.
It's sharp. It looks good, man. You can. I thought I was on a modeling site when I first got on here. I said, "Oh no, this is him." The guy, he's a good-looking dude, man. Charles, speaking of the writing and books, right? We got to constantly get better and sharpen our saw. You mentioned about some of your sessions have come from ideas from books. So all leaders are readers. What are you reading right now?
So with all the things I'm doing, not a whole lot of time to read. So I listen to stuff in the car, lots of audiobooks.
Audio,
but the other day, so I'm part of this AI coalition here in Chicago, and we just met last week Thursday. And so during that conversation, somebody was like, "Yeah, I was playing around with vibe coding." I was like, "Vibe coding," and it just so happened that this episode popped up talking about vibe coding from this woman who went to Canva Create out in San Francisco. So I was like, well, there's that vibe coding. I want to know more about this, right? I want to learn more about it. And I did. So I jumped in. And so right now, I think a lot of my reading is episodes or things that pop up, but really a lot of it lately has been in the space of AI, right? Because of the way that it is transforming our educational space in real time. Like it is changed every day, every week, something is new. And so there's this new thing with vibe coding, right? Which I was like, that sounds very complicated. And then you listen to it and you're like, not so complicated, but can have a huge impact on the work that we're doing and really shifting the way that people are going about work, right? And so for me, right, listening to these podcasts, jumping into TED Talks and all of these different spaces, of just constantly staying abreast, staying at the forefront of all these shifts that are coming down the pathway.
Good stuff, Charles. And I'm glad you said that, right? We're busy. It's hard reading. I try to do at least 10 minutes a night. Kind of helps me fall asleep, but there's Audible. There's an alternative. If you're in the car, if you're going for a walk, it doesn't mean you can't consume that all important content. Well, that's a great thing you're learning there. How about this summer? What's something you're going to look to do this summer to sharpen your saw?
So really, really narrowing in, really focusing. As we were talking a little bit earlier, kind of all over the place, right? Doing a lot of different projects. And so one of the things, right, and speaking of AI, right, Chat and I are great friends. And so like the other day I was like, Chat, listen, like I feel like I'm all over. I really want to really narrow things down, right? Can we focus on that? And so we've created a 6-month plan starting from June through December about what this is going to look like. So really honing pieces in, right? Developing some workshops, virtual workshops, not just for conferences. So that's really going to be what I'm working on over the summer, of leading into the space of this learn, grow, lead, this idea of the sustainable leadership, which has really been the theme that I've been working on, and just really focusing that messaging, focusing the work that I'm doing, and utilizing that as an opportunity to spend more time with family, right? And not just running around chasing all the things, but being way more intentional about how I'm approaching everything.
Great points there, Charles. I haven't used it myself, but I like how you said we. We created this plan.
so what, again, at this coalition that I was talking about, I loved it. Said it should always start with, whenever you're talking about AI, it starts and ends with you, right? Like, you have the ideas, you have the talent, you have the knowledge, you have the understanding, and you dump those things into whatever platform you're using, whether it's Gemini, right? Whether it's chat, whether it's Copilot, or all the number of other things that are being developed, and it spits something out. But then you take that thing that it spit out and you dump yourself back into it, and you curate and you make it yours. And it's this process over and over and over again. And so it always begins and ends with you. And so absolutely, it's a we thing, right? Like, I'm dumping this stuff in, it's coming out, we're generating, we're playing, we're creating ideas. And I know some people are like, oh, you're cheating if you're using AI. Like, no, like, utilizing AI, if you're doing it right, will supplement the skills and the talents that you have. I'm able to get so much more done, so much more quickly, because, right, we are now working together. And so and the reality is, right, I think of like Blockbuster. You could be like, nobody's going to be streaming these movies. They're going to be coming in here Friday night, picking up these VHS tapes and looking at the back scene if it's there, right? Like, and then you're out of business. So I'm not trying to be a Blockbuster, right? I'm not trying to be a Redbox. I'm trying to be Netflix. I'm trying to be all these streaming services.
Yeah, that's a great point there. Friends, jump in the chat. Again, say hello to Charles. A question, comment. Charles, something that we haven't talked about that you wanted me to ask or you wanted to speak about.
Yeah, you know what? I think just one of the things, and I've touched on this a little bit, and this goes, obviously talking about leadership and education. I think it's important, and we talked a little bit about, before we jumped on, about bandwidth, right, and sacrifices, because every time you say yes to something, whether you recognize it or not, you are saying no to something else, right? We have limited bandwidth, we have limited capacity, and so just making sure that the things that you are saying yes to are the things that are important. And I wish that I could go back, because I remember chasing after this space of being a school administrator and saying, hey, you know what, I'm a dad, I'm a family man, family is important to me. But the things that I was saying and the things that I were doing were not aligned, right? And I'm ashamed, because like I wasn't living that at the time, but I can do those things now. And so that I would say that to my school leaders is just being very intentional about how you're moving, right? Recognizing the sacrifices that you're making and asking yourself if you're okay with it, right? Because at the end of the day, right, there's going to be another school leader. There's going to be another person that will, right? If you leave your role, somebody else is going to step in. But at the end of the day, your kids aren't going to have another father. Your spouse isn't going to have another spouse. Like, so be intentional about the spaces that you're living in. And so has been an aha, has been a reckoning for myself. And so I just want to share that with others, because I wish somebody would have told me that, right, 15 years ago. Like, be careful about the process that you take, the route that you take. So, because nobody did it for me, I just want to deliver that message to others.
Charles and I shared off air. We both have daughters graduating this year. Charles got 5 girls there. So he had to shave off his hair because he needed the shampoo and conditioner for all those.
Yeah, I couldn't afford them for everybody.
Yeah, awesome stuff there. Yeah, Amy, it is great points there, and appreciate that, Charles. Got to give a shout out to our friend Asael Ruvalcaba from Texas, tuning in. Thank you, Asael, for tuning in. Well, let's roll, Charles. Speaking of time, it's coming that time. It's rapid fire. These are quick answers. You're from Illinois. I know you'll handle it. Here we go. Last movie you saw?
Sinners. Great movie.
I've heard that. Good?
So good. So many layers. It's one that you got to watch multiple times. Go see it. When you go see it, hit me up. Let me know. We could talk about it.
Sinners. My recommendation to you is The Life List. Todd Whitaker recommended it. It's on Netflix. Fantastic.
All right. I'll add it to my queue.
It'll go in line a little bit of what you talked about, your time, your intentionality, your family. It'll go in line with that. The Life List. Very, very good. Last concert you went to?
Ooh. I haven't been to a concert, so it's from people. I think the last one that I could remember, at least, was a Jimmy Buffett cover band.
Okay, those are fun.
Those so much fun, and a lot more cheap, a lot cheaper than the actuals, right?
Last song you sang out loud in the car.
Have you heard Jelly Rolls? I'm not okay.
I haven't. No.
And it's just it feels like you are preaching to yourself, like I am not okay, but everything's gonna be all right. And it's transparent, it's honest, it's raw. Check it out.
Windows open. You're singing out loud.
Oh yeah,
Your favorite dish?
favorite has to be shrimp and grits.
Ooh.
Yeah,
That's just,
love some shrimp and grits.
but you're a northerner.
I am, but I don't think I belong up here.
Yes, say that in February too. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Every
Yeah.
winter I question decisions. Every
Yeah.
winter.
Can you get shrimp and grits up in Chicago area? You got a spot?
Yeah, there's a few spots that pay homage to Nola. There's one actually in Hyde Park. So there's Ina May's, there's Maple Tree, but Virtue in Hyde Park, and the chef there is a James Beard Award winner. One of the few African American James Beard people in Chicago. So shout out to Virtue.
You travel a lot for work. You like to travel as well. What's some of the best places you've traveled?
Man, so my wife and I, if there's one place we're gonna go stateside is New Orleans. We love New Orleans. We've been there I don't know how many times. We visited Savannah. Savannah was nice, old, a little questionable on some of the ideologies there, but beautiful, beautiful space. I'm in Vegas every summer. I enjoy it because I get to hang out. There's a massive conference there. My wife hates it because of the heat. You'll probably notice most of the spaces I'm naming are pretty far south. I love the warm. I love the heat. She's like, let's stay up north.
New Orleans and Savannah, spot on there, man.
Yeah.
Really beautiful, Savannah, Georgia. Well, back to Illinois. Who's your sports team in Illinois?
No question. Go Cubbies. Like if you were to pan out right now, I have Cubby gear everywhere. Signed autograph jerseys up there, balls. I have a Javier Baez's broken bat over there. Like, I mean, go Cubbies all the way.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. How often do you get to a game?
I try to go at least twice a year. This weekend is the crosstown, so we'll see how that. And it's at Wrigley this time, so they off. In July they'll be down at the other stadium on the south side of the city.
The White Sox have been down, man. They really have been down. It hasn't been much of a rivalry. Yeah.
I mean, but they've got something going for them now, right? There's this guy that is a Sox fan. I think the Pope. I think.
Well, speaking of the Pope, that's my next question. The guy's from Chicago. How do you feel? Are you watching your mouth? You're not cursing as much anymore.
It's a weird energy, a weird vibe. I mean, everywhere you go, every time you turn on the news, right, it's about the Pope, and the memes that are coming out of Chicago are crazy, right? There's this thing where he came out right onto the balcony when he first presented, right, and somebody remixed Chicago house music, so everybody's like, I was like,
beautiful.
So definitely put in a Chicago spin on it.
We grew up in an Augustinian parish here. The Pope is an Augustinian. We're just, we were thrilled to hear that. So I know Chicagoans are as well. Deep dish pizza, fill in the blank. Deep dish pizza is.
I'm going to get flack for it. I would say overrated. But it is something that you got to try at least once. If you're coming to Chicago, you got to give it a shot. But there's so many other things, right? That and probably that my grandson loves thin crust, and so because he loves thin crust, that means that all of us must love thin crust.
So if you walk in a pizzeria, they're offering both, or are some just deep dish?
So most places are going to do both, and so you got that pub style, that cracker, really thin crust. I love that. But there is a spot, and I will tell people, if you're coming to Chicago and you want pizza, but you want something a little bit different, go to Lincoln Park. Go check out. It is Chicago Grinder. It is a pot pie pizza. So if you want deep dish, this is different. You got to check it out. Google it. You'll know what I'm talking about.
Okay. Knife and fork, right?
Definitely knife and fork.
Okay.
You cannot eat that with your hands. I mean, you can, but it's not going to be pretty.
In 2025, I have filled in the blank.
Yeah, I've really leaned in. I focused on saying no to things and just getting rid of, right, clearing the plate, clearing the clutter.
Good. Well, now you answered the second question too. I have stopped, so we'll move on. What's a pet peeve of yours?
So last week I was in a meeting and we were reading this book, and there was a chapter in there, and there was this phrase that I loved, and it was like that when people consistently, right? Have you ever had those conversations over and over and over again? It's like either people aren't ready to have them, or they're just messing around with you. And the phrase in the book says, I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to say it, we could beep it out, but it said intentional fuckery afoot, and I was like, love this because that is my pet peeve. Just be honest. Just be honest with me. Like, just cut the BS, cut the nonsense. Let's have some real honest conversations.
Effery of foot. How about that? There's a new educational term right there.
Yeah, I told my peers in the meeting, I said, listen, I'm making you all signs. So whenever we're in a meeting, if somebody's just doing nonsense, we could just hold up the sign.
At 8 a.m. on Saturday morning, I am fill in the blank.
Yeah, it depends, right? If my grandson is here, I am up and hanging out with him. He's an early bird, and so am I. So who knows what we'll be doing. If he's not here, my wife is sleeping, and that means I'm in here in my office grinding out, churning out some things.
Yeah, it's a great time to get some work done early in the weekend mornings. One thing you're curious about?
I'm curious really about how AI and education, that intersection. I'm very curious to see where it's going to go, how it's going to impact, and what's going to result because of it, right? I don't think AI is the end of this. I think it's the beginning of something completely new. And so I'm very curious to see where we're going to go.
Something about Charles Williams that people do not know about.
Well, I gave you one earlier, right? The married, divorced, 2 kids, all before I was 21. Some people may know this, some people may not. But Andrew, I have a ton of tattoos: my arm, my chest, my back. Yeah. If you see me in the summer in the pool, you're like, wait, who is that guy? So,
any dip below the thing here? Any dip below?
No. I was very, very intentional, right? So that way I could wear the short sleeves. So, I was in that space. Like tattoos were kind of like, that's not a real professional thing. So I try to keep everything hidden.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple myself, but I'm debating, does it, something below the sleeve? I don't know about that. Yeah, I'm on the fence myself.
I think things have shifted now. I think it's a lot more acceptable because, I remember when it was like there were tattoo policies within my school, like teachers could not have tattoos that were visible. So.
Yeah, I remember that. And referees, I lived the refereeing world. The guys would have to put makeup on their arm to cover it,
Yeah. And it's different now.
Charles, give me a quote. I know you're a writer. I know you're a learner. Give me a quote that inspires you to help end the show.
Yeah, there's a movie, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and there was a phrase in there that I love. It says that consistently talking isn't necessarily communicating, and so I think a lot of times, even in the spaces that we're in, there's a lot of talking heads. There's a lot of people out there saying a whole lot of stuff. But just simply because people are talking, simply because they're saying stuff, doesn't really mean they're communicating. And so, I think it's really important when we're in spaces like this to be very cognizant about what it is that we're sharing so that it has value, that it's lifting people up, that it's growing individuals, because there's so much nonsense that is out there. So I appreciate sharing space with you and being able to do that, right? Hopefully, whoever's listening to this knows that we're communicating when it's just not just talking.
Charles Williams, friends, Illinois, excellent presenter. His stuff is in the show notes, his website, and certainly sign up for his blog. The name, the Counter Voice. What's the name of the podcast?
The Counter Narrative Podcast. Yeah.
Counter Narrative Podcast. So check that out with Charles. And again, his website is in the show notes. And if you're looking for a presenter, definitely check Charles out. We appreciate you, Charles. Thanks for coming on, my friend.
I appreciate the opportunity, Andrew.
All right. Best of luck down the stretch and keep supporting those educators. You stay on the line a second, Charles, and we're going to sign off here on the podcast. Charles, keep surviving and thriving, friend.
Appreciate it.